right, so we're going to discuss your vehicle list in QuickBooks. So that's here under List, Customer and Vendor Profile, and then we have our vehicle list down here. We have a lot of questions around the vehicle list, mileage, etc., the way that it's tracked in QuickBooks. So it's not an area that is accessible through the QuickBooks API, so we can't import in mileage, right, into QuickBooks through TPI or something like that. I had seen online a couple of things where they said that you can via an IIF file, but I've never seen that IIF file, so to me, I just say we can't import it. But realistically, I don't know that we really want to when it comes to this kind of thing. But let's talk about what it does first before we talk about what it doesn't do. Okay, so vehicle list, right? A vehicle, when we set up a new vehicle, it's just a free type. You can't have a description. So we can say, you know, truck 1234. We can say, you know, Joe's truck, Amy's truck, whatever it is. Okay, now once we have the vehicle set up, you can come in, and when you're entering mileage, right, you can tie that mileage to a vehicle. So we're entering mileage for Amy's truck. I can say, you know, the start date, the end date, the start and end of my odometer. So if I said 5280 and then we ended up at 14,875, right? That's a lot of mileage. But you can put in the total miles there. You can associate it with a particular job if you wanted to, if we wanted to make this billable. If you're going to make it billable, you have to choose an item, right? We have to have a service item set up. You can assign it to a particular department, and then I can put in some notes here. So, you know, travel time. Okay, so I can say save and close. So once I've created that, there are a couple of reports that we can go to. So mileage by vehicle summary. I can see all of the mileage by vehicle for a particular time. I can also see the details, right? Obviously, a little bit different. I can come in here and see mileage by job summary. Okay, so how much mileage we have associated with particular jobs. And then we can also see mileage by job detail. All right. Now, entering the mileage there doesn't do anything, right? So if I go back in here to my enter vehicle mileage and I say I want to go to my transaction journal, right? There isn't a transaction happening with this. All we're doing is we're recording it so that we can report on just the reports I showed you. This does not trigger that I need to reimburse Amy for mileage if that's what we do. This does not trigger that the customer automatically gets an invoice. It's marked as billable, so it'll show up when I invoice the customer in the future. So if I go in to create an invoice now for customer 2, right, I'm going to see the mileage in there that we have to bill for. I've set up my mileage item with my rates, and they do have some rates in there for what I bill out. And I can add that to my invoice, right? So I can make it a billable if I do time and materials type of thing. But again, this is not reimbursing Amy for mileage if that's something that we have to do. I would have to then separately go in and either enter a bill or on her paycheck, enter in the mileage that we need to reimburse Amy for. Okay. Now, for a lot of people, what I've seen is if they do want to get mileage entered in the system, a lot of times they're reimbursing. So what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll import in a bill, right? And that we need to pay Amy back. And on the bill, we can mark it as billable. We use the time, we use mileage, right? And so I see that I owe Amy, you know, for 5,000 miles or whatever it is of mileage. I can import that in. It'll still show up the exact same way when I go to create my invoice, right? So when I choose to create my invoice for customer 2, it won't show up under the mileage tab. It'll show up under expenses tab, or I'm sorry, it'll show up under the items tab because we're using the item mileage. It would show up here, so it won't show up under the mileage tab, but it'll still show up here as a reimbursable expense that we need to bill out to our customer, or a time and materials expense that we need to bill out to our customer. Okay, so if I import it that way as a bill, not only does my payable already in there to know that I have to pay Amy back, but then I also have it, you know, entered in for my invoicing side, and I don't have to key it in, right? I can import it. So if you guys need help with that, definitely give us a call. In that way, in that fashion, right? The only thing that you have to think about is you have to think about well, what if I have to know how much I've paid Amy, or what if I have to know how much Amy's used for mileage last year, right? You can still go in and run a report by vendor. Okay, so I could run a report by Amy and say, filter that report and say, how much have I paid Amy for mileage, and include the quantity on there, right? So you can still get to that same report, but it's not going to be as pretty as the vehicle report that you get here, right? Where it's nice and clean. Amy's truck logged 9,500 miles. Now, of course, if this is not something that we're reimbursing for, like Amy and Joe, right? They're using company trucks. So we don't have the expenses side, then sometimes if it's just going to be on the income side that we need to bill this mileage out to the customer, then sometimes I've seen my customer continue to use this mileage report. They'll go in once a month. They have 10 trucks. It's 10 transactions they need to enter. They'll do it for the entire month. Now, if you're doing it for multiple jobs, of course, it can be a lot. Again, we can figure out ways around that so we can mass import it instead of doing it through this mileage way, because that can be kind of painful. Anytime you're doing something, right, where you're tracking it outside, especially in Excel or, I don't know, some kind of logbook, not a handwritten logbook. Obviously, if it's handwritten, then you have to key it in no matter what. But if it's in some kind of Excel spreadsheet or some kind of, electronic data format, give us a call and we could figure out a way to import it in versus having to come in and key it in all the time. But at least right, what a vehicle list does, what it can be used for. And again, maybe we have only 3 or 4 trucks that go out and we only work four jobs per truck. It's not that much to enter in once a month to get that data in. Okay, so that is your vehicle list.